They were looking for a freelance lawyer. Someone who could get the job done quick, no questions asked. I got the dress down on the job from a 5-foot Betty who crashed my gates late Tuesday. She had some alluring legal contracts that fixed me in time and space. Aged me like a sweaty Parmesan. The files danced through my mongering mind like Twyla and Alvin. She was a lawyer herself, but she needed someone on the level, someone she could trust. Plus, she hated reviewing contracts, and that's the only thing I not a Windsor for. So I says to her, "Look, counselor, we all passed the bar, so I'm not going to pass the buck until I collect what's owed." Sure, I don't like dealing with the numbers. And yeah, I'd like to be a part of a legal community, maybe mentor someone and find better work. If there was a place that could hook lawyers up to work on projects and make connections. What if there is? What if there's a way to connect the gig economy to a meaningful professional legal community? We're jazzed about this. Let's dig in.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the podcast for law firms that's not afraid to stare into your ears. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in personal and professional development. I'm Jake Sanders, your mysterious co-host. And joining me today is the never mysterious Paul Julius. Paul, why are you such a straight shooter?
You know, I think it all goes back to this time I met this dude at the crossroads, and he had me sign this weird thing, and I've never been able to tell a lie ever since.
Okay, you signed that contract too.
It seemed legit.
It was totally legit.
I'm not a lawyer, but whatever.
What's on the show today?
On the show today, we talk about why lawyers leave the legal profession from an article on thebalance.com. We interview LawyerExchange.com founder and CEO Bob Meltzer about his legal work sharing platform and how law firms can operate in the future. And as always, Bob sits under the hot lights for 10 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The article today is from thebalance.com. It's Why Do So Many Lawyers Leave the Profession? Written by Allison Monahan. So, Paul, what was your take on this? You found this article. What brought your attention to it, and why are we talking about it?
So there's a couple different things, but what sort of got me thinking about it was we actually have a lot of people on the show who used to be lawyers, and moved into something else, or I shouldn't say used to be lawyers, but who were practicing lawyers and have moved into different areas where they're not necessarily working client side.
Well
right?
said, yeah.
And it's curious, and it made me wonder, especially after talking to Bob, because he's done some really amazing things, with regards to not only pioneering some things with immigration law, but as well as, what he's currently working on now with kind of helping lawyers in kind of a non-traditional sense. So I was looking up some of these different things, and I found this article, and it's got 5 things in here that says, why lawyers leave the profession. It says the hours, the pressure, the constant arguing, the lack of control, the boredom with work. Especially after we were talking to Bob, and we've discussed this before about the gig economy here, about working more in the sense of projects, working more in the sense of I'm going to just work on this case as a referral thing. But that would kind of, if you look at these things, if you really embraced that idea of like, I'm going to be like I don't know if you call it a freelance lawyer, but maybe I'm going to practice in somewhat of a non-traditional way instead of getting hired on at a huge law firm and being an associate and working my way up. People are finding that's harder and harder to do coming out of law school. Or maybe you're not down with it anymore. You did it. It's not a thing. Could some of the things that Bob talks about, could some of the things that this gig economy, being able to kind of pick and choose, would that solve 2 of the 5 problems here, lack of control and boredom with the work?
It definitely couldn't hurt And the best part about the interview with Bob is that Lawyer Exchange helps create a community. And I think we kind of are finding, it says here, you know, a lot of lawyers leave because there's a lack of control, or they opt out of firms and large organizations to open their own solo practices. But really, if you open your own solo practice, now everything is on you. You have to do the bills. You have to really think about marketing. You have to turn into the business, you know, owner. And a lot of people are shying away from that because they don't want to be business owners. And so a lot of law firms are struggling. And what if it was possible for you to create a community where you could start breaking up work, draw in new talent, and not have to pay them full time, but just get some work done, have them get experience. You can teach, you know, you can pass it on. It just seems like there's an opportunity for lawyers to work together. And there seems to be some hesitance for people wanting to share a whole bunch of their knowledge. And I think that's one of the things that will prevent someone from engaging in the gig economy authentically, because you don't want to share your secrets. So everything's close to your chest, and it doesn't seem like you're growing like the industry. You're just growing what you can. You're tending your own garden. And there's something about Lawyer Exchange that thinks about an ecosystem and tries to build it up, because Bob was the first one to offer legal services online on the internet. So he beat LegalZoom, he beat Rocket Lawyer. This is a lawyer who created these things and now is an entrepreneur and is still innovating because he cares about the community. I think that's something that needs to be driven, that the gig economy is important and you should be a freelancer. You can get all your experience, but you need to rely on the powers of everyone around you, and you need to know what your shortcomings are so you can get the help and maybe give someone else another chance. And I think there's a little bit of giving and getting here. So it's not just about growing and being the best or leaving a profession that crushes your soul because you lacked that control. I think there's an opportunity for the gig economy to help lawyers embrace the aspects of practicing law that they really love. And that's what I think is important. And that could totally get rid of these pressures or relieve some of those pressures and maybe kind of say, hey, it's part of it's part of keeping the lights on or something, you know?
Maybe. And I think there's another thing too that really struck me with this. And I think, one cool thing about Bob, and we keep bringing him up. It's an amazing interview. That's all I can say.
I know.
This is really cool.
I know.
But he's got this kind of standing on the skyscraper looking down view where he's been involved in it for so long that he can say, look, there's this problem on the one side. And that's where we look at this, like this article where it says so many people are leaving the profession. Or we've talked to other people, Carly, who with De Novo, saying it's really hard for lawyers to find jobs, especially if you're just coming out of law school.
Tight.
So we've got people who are getting burned out. We got people who can't get work in the first place. But then there's this whole other side of, well, why are they getting burned out? Why is there this pressure? Because some people have too much work. So Bob is saying, well, why can't we all just get together and figure out how to solve this problem through a network? So it's I really feel like it's a little bit different than a gig economy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times a gig economy seems to be just a race to the bottom of who's going to do it cheap.
Yeah, I'm on Fiverr. Yeah, exactly.
And that's not what this is. This is more like, let's get the right people doing the right jobs to solve each other's problems. I've got too much work. You don't have enough work. You can make that happen. You're interested in doing contract law and right now you're doing bankruptcy. Well, here's some things where you can kind of test the waters.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit different, but it's an amazing solution.
It's an interesting opportunity for lawyers to think project based and to kind of change the way they view practicing. And that's why the interview with Bob is sort of transformational, because it's not just business as usual. It's a community, it's an industry, and it's a way to make the profession viable in the future.
Let's listen in.
Let's do it.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
I met Tanner, who works for Consultwebs, on a plane on the way back from Key West, Florida. And I'd just been thinking that I needed to do some more marketing for my law firm. So when he told me that he worked for Consultwebs, I was super excited. From the beginning till even now, I've been with them for almost 2 years, and the experience has really been great. Having Consultwebs on board is really like having your own team of people that really care about what kind of business you're getting. I mean, practicing law can seem kind of lonely. You always are wondering, how am I going to get clients? How am I going to make payroll? But with Consultwebs, it's not just me worrying about having people come in the door. They're there as well, and they've been so responsive. Since I started with Consultwebs, I have increased the number of employees double at least. And since I started with Consultwebs, the revenue has tripled. It's really been an incredible experience.
Go to Consultwebs.com to learn more.
And now, for a lawsome interview.
Bob Meltzer got his JD from Northern Illinois University and is the founder and CEO of LawyerExchange.com. Prior to the Lawyer Exchange, Bob also founded and operated VisaNow.com Inc., a high-growth, privately held company offering breakthrough technology-enabled global mobility services. Bob began his career at the legal office of the United Nations World Health Organization in Geneva, Switzerland, concentrating on public international law, international contracts, and international copyright. Throughout his career, Bob has developed law firms, law firm departments, and law practices in the areas of corporate, international, and immigration law. He's also been involved in bar associations and an adjunct professor of law, author, and lecturer. And now it's all going uphill thanks to a special appearance on the Lawsome podcast. We are honored to have Bob Meltzer on the show today. How are you, Bob?
Good. I'm great. Thanks. And thanks for having me.
Explain yourself. I kind of gave a pretty serious rundown there. That bio was pretty...
That was good. Yeah, that was good.
If you can kind of just talk about what took you from law school into entrepreneurship and then founding the Lawyer Exchange.
Yeah, it's funny. From law school to entrepreneurship, when I look back at it, I think that there was always that, that bug, because shortly, after getting back from Europe, I opened my own practice, and I did that kind of out of necessity. But like I said, when I look back at it, I think I was always an entrepreneur. So I was in the field of international law. And so when I got back to the States after that first job at the UN, there really wasn't any practices, for me to move into. So the option was really to go into, a customary practice like corporate, or open my own practice in international, which is what I did. And that turned out to be a really good thing for me because there wasn't a lot of competition at the time. So I was able to grow that very quickly and merge into one of the larger, older Chicago firms. And there I was, practicing international law, working in the corporate department. I'm happy, thought I'd be there forever. And then toward the end of the 80s, had the idea of focusing on U.S.-China work because I thought that was going to be a big area. And again, that was a little bit of the entrepreneurial bug, coming out. And that worked out really well too. Obviously, we all know the 90s was a boom, for U.S.-China trade. And that was my focus. So it was during that time that a lot of my clients started asking me if I could help them in immigration law. So I was representing a lot of Chinese clients in the States. They would ask me, could you help me with immigration, which I didn't do. And I didn't know really much about. But I was starting to send out so much of that work. I told my partners that we were missing an opportunity. This is what led to Visa Now. And I said that we should actually, go ahead and offer the service. And they said, okay, that's a great idea, but you do it. So I thought, okay, I'll hire somebody that knows about immigration law. And that's how I got into it. But the person that I hired, who was just a few years out and had experience in immigration at a immigration law firm, did it the way everybody did it, which to me seemed extremely slow and painful. And that's the way the immigration process was at that time. And I would ask, why do we do it this way? Well, that's the way it's done. And now we're kind of in the mid 90s. And I'm thinking there's got to be a better way to do this. I was playing a lot on the internet, loved it, and the two thoughts came together. And I thought, why not, put this online? There were really no legal services to speak of online at the time.
Wow.
So it was a pretty novel idea. Luckily, my partners didn't like the idea. I say that because they wouldn't support it. And it was for that reason, but I still loved it. So I decided I'm going to do this myself anyway. And that's what actually ended up taking me out of my law practice, because I created this application, which became a company, Visa Now, and it just kind of exploded. And by the late 90s, it was just about a year and a half, I ended up leaving the practice and going to work there full time. And I did that then, and I grew that practice. I grew that company and kind of online legal services at the same time. You can imagine back in 99, I was almost there in the beginning, with LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer, and we were all starting those things, And so I did that for about 15 years, and then company changed, grew very, large. It still exists, and made a decision to move on to something else. And I started thinking about what I was going to do, talk to, having been so entrenched in legal tech, I thought, well, I might as well leverage that and talk to all the people I knew. For a long time, I had that luxury, law professors at law schools and people in legal tech, and started focusing on the issues that was still, that I thought still needed to be solved in law. And, was starting to narrow them down. And, the law profession as a market is incredibly tight. And probably the biggest result of that is that law grads, have a lot of trouble getting jobs. And that was one of the things I was really starting to focus on. Like, how could I do something about that? How could we really do something to address that? And at the same time, I'm talking to my colleagues, kind of the baby boomers that are well into their practices and having another challenge, that they can't really grow their practices because the market's so tight. They, would love to be able to go out and get more work, but they can't get any help, because if they want help, that means they have to hire somebody full time, and it's just too risky to do that for them. So they kind of level out in their practices. Now, as baby boomers, they're living longer and working longer, and having that issue. There was no real way to retire, no real way to grow the practice and monetize it. So I was thinking, hey, these two groups need to get together. And that's how the Lawyer Exchange came to be.
I was just on Twitter this morning, and Dan Lear from Right Brain Law was saying that lawyers need to start thinking like entrepreneurs. They need to start thinking about client side services, like you're a client services department that happens to be legal. But it seems like you've really taken this advice and you did it 20, 30 years ago. So I want to know more about this Lawyer Exchange, because it seems like if people think they need to be entrepreneurs, they need to go it alone. But there's something about creating a community and a cohesion, and sort of like, I'm thinking it like a lone wolf versus pack mentality. And I think Lawyer Exchange kind of has this pack mentality, and I want to know more about it. So let's talk about Lawyer Exchange. How does it work? How do lawyers get help, and how do they join up?
So generally, to start, it's it's a platform where lawyers looking for work can find work on a project basis, and lawyers needing help can find it by posting specific short-term projects. So the ones looking for help we refer to as hiring lawyers, and the ones looking for work we refer to as project lawyers. And they both can easily join at no cost. They both complete short profile wizards. And once they're in, they can either post a project if they're looking for help, or they can browse projects if they're looking for work. If a project lawyer finds a project that looks interesting to them and looks like it's a good fit, then they make a proposal to the hiring lawyer. And once they do that, at that point, they can start to communicate. They can discuss terms, discuss more about the project. They can start working together. And then once that work's completed, then the tools that we have available is the project lawyer is then able to create an invoice, which automatically goes to the hiring lawyer, and the hiring lawyer can open it up and through our tools and other merchant processing easily pay.
Wow.
So the whole process, right, is what we've created to help people find each other and kind of come to the end of that process on a project basis.
Yeah. So Lawyer Exchange, it's not just about the legal work. It is more about that community. So talk about the benefits to being on the Lawyer Exchange, finding new work, mentorship, and then you talk about sunsetting or sort of like retiring. How do people pass off practices through Lawyer Exchange? Because I think that's super fascinating and something that I know a lot of people are thinking, when am I going to retire? Is it even possible? So talk more about the community angle from Lawyer Exchange.
The general issue there is that there's no real way of finding, like the right people. So the initial idea, like I mentioned, of the Lawyer Exchange was to solve, those couple of problems. And for the new lawyer, at the time, we thought like the new lawyer and the re-entering lawyer, we were going to help them find work. And for the ones that were creating their own practices, also help them find mentorship, things that they could find by finding the right people to work with. On the hiring lawyer side, we realized that the key to growing the practice was getting the help. But again, it was at a big cost and a big risk. And it was kind of a, catch-22 for the small and the solo practitioner. They need the help to grow, but they can't afford to take on the risk to get the help they need, so they can't grow.
Mm-hmm.
So Lawyer Exchange would help them in that way, and so they'd be helped too. Then they could get the help they needed. That was the idea at low cost, low risk, grow the practice, and by doing that, they could find longer term relationships. They could find those people that they're looking for, and again, do it at a low risk kind of step by step. And those people might turn into full-time employees, eventually maybe even partners, and possibly the successors they're looking for. But the idea is they're growing their practice, they're creating an ability to create liquidity. One more thing I'd add, since we've started, we've been up and running for 7 months now. We found that the lawyers that are signing up for both the hiring and the project lawyer side are signing up at all experience levels. So even the hiring lawyers, that are looking for help, some of them are new and some of them have been around a long time. And even the project lawyers, it's not just new lawyers, it's not just lawyers re-entering the profession, but it's also people that have been around a long time that are looking for extra work to do.
One thing that someone brought up to us a couple episodes back was access to justice. So there's this whole thing where there's all these lawyers, and this is more specifically, I think, regarding new people just getting out of law school. But they were saying, there's this problem with access to justice where there's so many types of things where, entering evidence in a divorce case, or going to tenant court or bankruptcy court or stuff like that, where you need a lawyer, and the barrier is just the cost barrier is too high, but it shouldn't be, right? So
Right.
Is there something there? Do you see something there? Like the reason I'm asking is like, you seem like, you're putting these things together. When we were discussing it, it was much more theoretical with this other guest, but it seems like these things could be put together. Like you could, help these new lawyers get this experience and get some stuff on their resume and maybe connect them with some firms. At the same time, help people who, maybe just have what most people would consider a fairly simple legal problem. But still, if they don't go to court with the lawyer and the other person does, they're going to lose. Is there something there?
I think so. Paul, I think you're really hitting on it. I'm all about efficiency, and I come from that background. And a lot of times, lawyers just aren't, they're not thinking efficiently because they're thinking about the billable hour, and there's a conflict between the two. Some people say that the billable hour is the thing that really hurts the lawyers, like in the long run. So one of the things that I think we can get at ultimately here is to create efficiency and create really the focus on efficiency, because that's what this does. That's what it allows the lawyers to do things more efficiently. And I think long term, we're really looking at efficiencies that can ultimately be passed on to the community that needs legal services. And it's a very strange time right now, because you've got all these people that are having trouble finding jobs. You've got a market that's incredibly tight, yet you've got 82% of the people that need legal services in the United States can't access them. Okay, and people are referring to that as like people law, the things that people need to do. Why is that? That's so crazy. Well, obviously, the reason is that lawyers, are fighting for a shrinking, pie. They're fighting over a shrinking pie as fees go up. And so I think one of the things that needs to happen in the profession, something has to kind of give, something has to break loose here. And I think it's really the efficiency of the way things are built. And again, I come from that. I mean, that's what I did. I created a service that was a flat fee, which, to some was like blasphemy in the legal profession. But I think that's where we have to go. I mean, you see more and more young practices turning to the flat fee and realizing that they actually can get more business, create more efficiencies, and actually have better margins. So I think long term, that's where we're going. And I agree with you. I think it's tied in.
Well, and it's interesting because a flat fee, that's something that you run into. Like before I got into this, in my past life, I was in manufacturing and stuff, and you run into this thing where if you're talking about an hourly rate, you actually are shooting yourself in the foot for becoming more efficient. Like if I can do something better, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So a flat rate really does make a lot of sense. And I think too, you were talking about, Rocket Lawyer, LegalZoom. That's a way that people can look at it. And instead of being afraid, like, oh, there goes my hourly rate, it's really a solution to how you can compete with people who just need a legal service. I don't need a relationship with a law firm. I just need to get this bankruptcy filed. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Like once you let that go, you can think of it in terms of like any other business. How do I acquire more business? How do I develop more business? And then how do I become more efficient and more profitable?
Okay. So I mean, we've talked about this before, and you touched on it earlier, and we've heard this before too, and it's kind of a common thing, but it seems like there's a barrier to lawyers even asking for help. So how do you help your clients realize they need help, and then how do you get them to set up these workflows and these things that can be sent to the exchange as something that they can then have outsourced or accessed by the network?
Yeah. Well, so like any new change of behavior solution, there's a learning curve. Hiring lawyers, the baby boomers don't wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to go look for a project lawyer. So there's a lot of education behind this. And the other thing that they're going to have to understand is they'll get the benefits offered by, project-based gig work solution, but they have to change their behavior somewhat, and they have to be willing to, work with people or start to work with people that they meet online. It's kind of a new thing for them. It's kind of like the way dating sites changed how we met people, 20 years ago. Also we're going to hear that people think it's riskier because, you're meeting people online and you've got that, finding a quality candidate has its challenges online, because you don't know them that well. However, we're going to continue to educate that risk is greatly reduced, because you're not going to be spending the time and you're not going to be spending the money that you would in a, traditional hiring, of a full-time employee. So in addition to that, once people come in and we want to make it easy for them to come in, it's not going to cost them anything. There's absolutely no risk to do that. But once they come in, we're going to continue to try and make it easy for them. We have plenty of support. We're creating a knowledge base of how-tos and tips, and we're always online, to answer any questions. And we're there to help the hiring lawyers create like the most attractive project briefs, so they target the right people. and then help the project lawyers draft the best proposals, that'll best, highlight their strengths, and then give them the best shot at being accepted by a hiring lawyer. So yes, you're right. There's going to be a process here.
Sometimes crowdsourcing has kind of negative connotations, so I don't know that I want to say that, but it seems like you could have somebody put up a project and find the exact right people for it just through this, as opposed to, saying, well, I think I might need this, and so what I'm going to do is put up this ad on LinkedIn and have to filter through, and then when I interview these people, I'm going to ask these questions. Like,
Right.
here you can be like, look, man, this is the project, and this is what I'm looking for, and you'll be able to kind of filter through people that way. Plus, you're involved. You know what I mean? You, like, the Lawyer Exchange already has some kind of built-in things, I'm guessing, to make sure that that nobody's gaming the system or anything
That's
like
right.
that.
That's right. And we'll continue to create an algorithm to help the matching,
Mhm.
And we're hearing from people. It's kind of interesting. I thought at one point it'd be like, oh wow, 1,000 people to choose from, and how's that going to work? And I don't know these people, but actually that's attractive to a lot of potential hiring lawyers. Like, wow, I've got this huge, potential community to reach out to, and that actually turns out to be something of a plus.
So I'm familiar with using Upwork, stuff like that, like freelance. It used to be Freelancer, or maybe it was Elancer.
Mm-hmm.
One thing they have is
Mhm.
like ratings. Do you do anything like that, or is this
Yeah.
more of a okay?
Yeah, and we made a decision when we did this to do it both directions. So both the project lawyers rate the hiring lawyers too, as
Oh,
well as the
nice,
hiring lawyers rate the project lawyers. Yeah, that
nice.
we figure that'll keep everybody, honest.
Right,
Honest.
right.
Yeah. For people who are a little bit leery, or maybe someone who's just new to this, I mean, do you have kind of like one tip, to people who are working in a law firm and how they can better approach their projects? And like, should they hire a project
Mhm.
manager? Should they get some software? Should they jump on the exchange, or is there some, like, how do you just think about the way people perceive project management?
Yeah, well, so first of all, you're talking about our project management, almost like from a corporate setting. A lot of lawyers don't even think in terms of projects, So that probably again is the first bit of education. But you know what I'd say, I would, if I could only give one tip, I would say come in and look, to firms that want to grow, the firms that want to, develop their practices, to come in, start using the Lawyer Exchange and see how easy it is, to get help, but, to see the tools that we've built and to see how easy it is to search and to choose and to start work and to complete it and to pay for the project. I don't think there's any need for a project manager, because again, the lawyers are kind of managing those projects, but I would foresee, as the firm grows, that you might have somebody dedicated. And again, project manager is not a title you hear in law firms a lot, but I think that position would be something you'd want to have and dedicate to managing projects. Now, down the road, when you have a lot. Yeah, in terms of software, no, I one of the things we're going to do is we're going to continue to add tools to make this whole process easier. And we, we envision adding tools that'll even make the practice and the management of the practice and the management of even the clients easier. Don't know yet, it's build or merge or, partner, or how that's going to work exactly. But that's our goal. See, we've got this platform, and and it's got tools that will help. And we're going to continue to increase the platform by adding tools.
Something struck me when Jake was asking there that question. We were discussing projects, and it seems like even with the terminology here, there's this kind of juxtaposition of projects versus clients, right? And it seems like that we're talking about the same thing. It's just a shift of how you're looking at it. And that's even going back to the bigger thing of LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer and saying, look, while it is a person or a company that needs this particular service performed, this job done, that's a project. And they're a client, but it goes back and forth. Do you see what I'm saying?
Maybe the way to do it is to determine like where in the relationship we're really viewing this.
Yes.
For example, the hiring lawyer, their relationship is with the client. Okay, so they're not going to talk about this in terms of a project. They're going to talk about it in terms of the client's needs and life and everything that's going on with them.
Yes.
When the hiring lawyer turns to the, to the community for help, whether it's the lawyer exchange or their law firm full of associates, whatever it is, then you're talking about the project.
Thank you. That's an excellent definition. That's what I was looking for. Perfect.
You don't want it to be simple, and you don't want it to be a one-size-fits-all answer, but there is sort of a reduction that has to happen on a personal side that I think it warrants specific mention.
And I'm glad you brought that up because sometimes it's a little confusing. We don't work with the clients. This is strictly for the lawyers, so we don't have those issues that people might think, between lawyers and clients. And because it's the lawyers that maintain that relationship, and that's got nothing to do with the help they need.
So, and that actually leads perfectly into the next thing I was going to ask you about was security concerns. Especially today with everything that's going on with social media and stuff, there's a lot of concerns about privacy and data security. How does Lawyer Exchange address these issues working with sensitive materials and maybe client confidentiality and stuff like that?
Yeah, great question. Well, so far, all the projects that we've seen, they're done without sharing, like any sensitive client documents in our system. So at this point, we don't have a lot of questions around privacy and data security. But, I expect, like I was telling you, we're going to be adding tools. So I expect at some point that'll change and we'll have more of a facility to share and transfer those sensitive documents. Now they meet each other and they'll do that however they do that. So at that point we'll be ready, I'd say, for that development and those questions. And if somebody wants to know right now, because they could, you are able to upload some documents here. So if they do that and somebody asks, in our current system, at this point, I'd explain we're cloud-based. And we use one of the major storage providers, and we would be happy to share how all that data is stored behind, well-protected firewalls and encryption. Yeah, it has to be.
It has to be. Yeah, going forward, and as this data privacy thing kind of starts to unravel, and Europe, the EU starts, clamping down regulations and stuff. I think it's going to be a fascinating time for us to participate in the gig economy, and I think that contract work is fantastic, but sometimes there's a downside to the gig economy. There's no health benefits. Your taxes are kind of like up in the air. So what's your outlook on contracting work in the gig economy, and how can workers kind of cover their own butts, when it comes to insurance and taxes? Does the Lawyer Exchange help in this regard, or what's your advice?
Well, sure, I'd have advice. At this point, I'd say our focus really is to assist the lawyers in finding help and finding work. But I could envision, a time down the road where we actually assist with like insurance and taxes, things like that, because that is going to be the community that we help. As far as the gig economy, like my outlook on it, the gig economy, it's a reaction, to like a stifling labor market. It's a response by employers who need to cut costs, but they still need to get things done. On the other side, you got employees that are either unable to find full-time work, or they're choosing to forego like traditional full-time work in favor of a more flexible work schedule, or maybe because, for the potential of greater rewards. So if they're making that choice, then presumably they've weighed, the upside against the downside here of the benefits and the taxes, things like that. My advice would be, there's for sure now there are insurance options available and they'd need to be researched. But I could envision, at some point us like helping on the insurance. Taxes, that's another story. And for all of us,
it's a story that'll change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess we're all waiting to see how this administration responds to the economy, and this would be actually a great thing for Congress to be talking about. Like taxes should be treated differently. Right now, when you're working on your own, you pay your full FICA, you pay your full 14%. When you work for a company, they split that with you. That's something that should definitely be addressed, because if they say in within 10 years from now, 40% of our labor market's going to be gig. That's something that Congress should address. Now I'm off on a tangent, but
no, but that was the tangent that I wanted to go off on, because I think it's important, because a lot of people are leery about the future. They think this is a staid position, and lawyers have been lawyers, and my dad had a briefcase and now I got a briefcase. And there is this sort of legacy thing that the future doesn't seem like it's as guaranteed as what we've been doing. So I could see why people don't want to go into this, because they're worried about that taxes and that insurance and stuff. And I think having someone from a company that participates in the gig economy is a very valuable point of view, because we're just thinking whatever I can get, whatever's there. And it's possible for you to create your own opportunities, sort of as you did in the late 80s,
And at some point, that's what I'm saying. Like at some point, I think Congress has to address the fact that people shouldn't be, necessarily punished for that, trying to develop their own practice. And again, because it's such a wave, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But a lot of times, there's not a choice. People can't find jobs. They have to go this route.
And it's unfortunate, because that's made it's constricting. I have to find a job, otherwise I'm going to get hammered with taxes. I won't have insurance. There's no 401k. There's none of this stuff. And so it seems like this, doing things on a project management or a project basis, or doing a gig thing, it could be very liberating for people. It could be a very viable option if you can't get your foot in a door at a firm, but now you've got all these things that you're worried about. And it's not, I think you're right. I mean, it's not fair. It's really not fair.
Right. And that's why I'm saying at this point in time, presumably they're weighing those, that upside against, the downside.
What I think the Lawyer Exchange is good for, and what I think the gig economy is good for, is I graduated my college with a jazz performance degree. And, there is no legacy for jazz musicians other than dying early. I don't know what else we have going for us. I was like, oh, well, maybe I don't want to be a part of that. But what I got to do through Upwork, Odesk, and kind of these things where I got to learn copywriting and advertising, and I got to play around with different hats. And it kind of freed me up and kind of showed the way for creativity and marketing and advertising, and sort of that kind of folded itself into kind of the brownie batter of my life. But I wouldn't have had access to that if I didn't participate in that gig economy, or allow myself to kind of think of different hats that I could wear and have a place where you can do that. So the person may not have the strength and benefits, tax shelters. I mean, you can't get a bank loan if you don't have gainful employment. So, I mean, there's a whole host of issues, but you could have experiences working on contracts specific to what you like to do, and you could kind of build that experience and kind of create something for yourself, which is nice, and I think it gives you an opportunity and frees lawyers up, because everyone practicing law has to have a JD. But what if you only really want to do a certain aspect of law? Lawyer Exchange might give you an opportunity for you to pursue those kind of niche passions and then turn it into maybe another business model.
Yeah, I mean, it's another, might be an extension actually of your legal studies, where you're actually getting paid to build your resume, to, show show it in terms of like strengths and the kind of work you want to go into. So you become more attractive, like when you go looking for that job.
That's it. That's it right there, folks. Join Lawyer Exchange and you get paid to build your resume.
All right.
You heard it from the man himself.
All right, hold on. I'm writing that down.
Let me scratch out a real quick.
Well, I got new
disclaimer.
bumper stickers.
Those are good. That's
Hey,
good.
all right.
How can people learn more about you, Bob, and more about Lawyer Exchange?
So easy, we've got all the information online. So visit lawyerexchange.com. Check us out. Join us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or really feel free to email me, bob@lawyerexchange.com. Any questions? Happy to answer them.
Ten questions we ask everyone.
Okay, here we go. With 10 questions, we ask everyone. Number 1, what was the last book you read?
Let's see. I'm reading Tomorrow's Lawyers by Richard Susskind. I just finished Fire and Fury
Nice.
by Michael Wolff.
Number 2, what is your best habit?
I make lots of lists. I keep good records.
Number 3, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, or none of the above?
Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Number 4, coffee or tea?
Both, almost every day.
Mixed at the same time.
I don't know what that's going to tell
Tan.
people.
Number 5, what is your favorite place?
A cabin I go to in northern Wisconsin and Disney World.
Number 6, is Keanu Reeves a good actor?
He's better than I am.
That's a great answer.
Number 7, what was your first job?
Bagging groceries and pushing carts.
Number 8, what is a skill you have outside your current occupation that you incorporate into your work?
Building things, and I organize everything.
Number 9, what sites, blogs, or newsletters do you regularly check in with?
So network and cable news apps, The Lawyerist, Above the Law, Legal Evolution, and ESPN.
Number 10, after a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
Play with my family, watch movies, and if I have time to myself, golf.
Sweet.
All right.
That's
I
it.
made it.
All right.
Loving it.
Right.
Well, we've made it. We've made it through. Thank you for being a good sport and answering 10 questions we ask everyone.
Thanks. Thanks again. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
For show notes, links, and info, go to www.consultwebs.com/lawsomepodcast. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.